Well, hello everyone, and good morning. It is I, your pal, J.Ishiro Finney, author and alien not in the human suit right now, and I've come to talk to you about nuclear warfare. Because, well, to be perfectly honest with you, as a child of the 80s, I'm seeing a lot of horrendously dumb things being said right now. And, I don't blame you guys. I don't blame you young ones out there who did not grow up during the 80s or the 70s or even the horrendous 50s and 60s. But there were some scary times in the past, and a lot has been forgotten. And the reality of what a nuclear war means doesn't really seem to have been passed on to the younger generation here. I've gotten into more than a few conversations with young people online who just don't seem to grasp what a nightmare even a small nuclear exchange would be. And I'm not sure, there does seem to be this general idea that, okay, I got a question here for you. I just went live and my viewership dropped. Any reason for that? I don't know. YouTube's been dicking with this channel, so I'm a little concerned about that. But getting to my point is I've gotten into more than a few conversations trying to educate primarily Zoomers, but also millennials about the dangers of nuclear war and why even a small exchange is terrible. And I even had to try and explain to a young woman the other night that, look, if Russia were to detonate something, we couldn't just neutralize Russia for doing it. She had no concept of what that meant, what neutralizing would entail, and the nightmare that that would be. Like I said, I was going to say is that there seems to be this idea that the worst case scenario would be like Fallout or Mad Max or The Walking Dead, and not even close. I mean, the reality of the situation is pretty rough. And let's just go down with some basics first, okay? Let's talk about a standard nuclear weapon, okay? Something that is in use now, nothing too huge, a 1 megaton bomb. Well, as we see here, this one is it's the yield here is 1.2 kilotons, but close enough, right? If a 1 kiloton bomb were to be dropped on Washington, this is what would happen. Okay. Now, that little circle in the center there is the nuclear fireball. That's, well, pretty much game over. If you're there, nothing's left. Everything has been turned to steam and ash. It's gone. It's been vaporized instantly. And then everything afterwards is where it gets interesting. So the realities of that detonation in Washington would be first a blinding flash at 13 miles away. Anyone who saw the flash or was facing towards it would be instantly blind for a temporary basis. Depending on how close they were and where they were looking, they could be permanently blinded as well. When I was growing up, the girl next door in high school was her mother was actually in well actually near Hiroshima when the bomb dropped, and she was a school student, and she said that apparently she saw the light shoot through the keyhole of the school door, and she showed us the black spot that had actually burned into her eye from it actually hitting her vision, which was really creepy. Now, if that were to happen at night, people up to 53 miles could be blinded. So that's the first one. Second is, okay, anyone within the nuclear fireball is fucked. And even if you're in a shelter, right, unless you're half a mile beneath the earth, you're cooked alive. There's really nothing you can do about it. But it's okay. It'll happen so fast you won't remember. You'll be gone before you even knew you were dead. People up to 5 miles away, though, would suffer third degree burns all over their body, which would be fatal if not treated within 20 minutes. People up to 7 miles away would experience severe first-degree burns. After that would come a shock wave. Everything within a 4-mile radius would be hit with 180 metric tons of force, which is strong enough to topple buildings and blow down brick walls. Also, there would be wind speeds up to 158 miles an hour, and that wind would be blazing hot and radioactive. Okay? The radioactivity in itself is another story, and that is a nightmare scenario that is actually worse than anything that happens in the initial bomb drop. The radioactivity that will occur within the first 2 weeks, you basically can't go outside. You need to go somewhere shielded and stay there for 2 weeks straight. Um, I don't know the science on it. Clearly, underground is best. But apparently, if you can't get underground, what you want to do is stay away from all of your windows and basically live the next 2 weeks in your hallway with the doors shut. Tape up the windows, put towels or foil under the door, put tape over the vents in your house. You just live in that one spot for 2 weeks as you wait for that high yield radiation to go away. That's the basics. Okay. That is the basics. I'm not even getting into all the real technical stuff. That is the basic information of one bomb. Now, a small nuclear exchange, and by small, keep in mind that's roughly about 100 nukes. Okay. Let's say nuclear. The example that I was heard used was India and Pakistan, two nations that really aren't that well armed but have nukes. If they were to go at it, that would pump roughly 5 megatons of radioactive black carbon into the atmosphere, which would drop global temperatures down to levels that we have not seen since the Ice Age. Also, global rainfall would stop by 9% for roughly anywhere between 5 to 10 years. This would cause massive crop failure, which could then lead to another 2 billion dying of starvation. Yeah, it is not a pretty picture. Now let's get into the more fun, disturbing stuff, okay? Anywhere a nuke is dropped, massive holes are punched in the ozone layer. If there was a full-scale nuclear exchange between Russia, China, Iran, and the Western nations, every military base, every city, every power plant, and every industrial center in the Northern Hemisphere would likely be hit. And there would be holes punched in the ozone over every single one of them. Estimated reduction of up to 70% of the Earth's ozone layer. That would do nasty things to crops as well, never mind skin cancer. Of course, I'm sure you all know about the EMP that would fry anything electronic that isn't shielded, although that's kind of iffy. Um, EMP isn't as clear cut as we all make it out to be. Seriously, if your computer were sitting in a parking structure with a lot of iron girders in it, it might be fine, believe it or not. If your house is built with a lot of iron in the inner structure, your electronic devices still might be fine. Also, EMP travels in a straight line. So frankly, if something is in front of it, it will not then seep in around it. It will literally just go in a straight line and pass you. So the universal frying of electronics isn't so clear cut. Also, it depends on where the blast is. If it happens above you versus on the ground, has a big part of whether or not the electronics get fried. Within initial strike of a major nuclear exchange, you're looking at basically 3 to 3.5 billion dead within the first 2 weeks. Afterwards, the smoke from the fires and all the crap thrown into the debris would trigger a nuclear winter, which again would essentially be like an ice age for anywhere to 5 to 10 years, depending. Um, that's pretty nightmarish in its own. Weather patterns would be permanently altered. The ecosystem would break down, and again, you would have to deal with starvation. Also, radiation wouldn't just go away. You would have to worry about these massive clouds of radiation blowing around the globe, and this would be a frequent problem. And you would have really few ways of knowing if you're currently being bombarded by radiation. unless you're seeing black rain outside, and then that means the rain's radioactive. Yeah, it's a pleasant sight. One of the arguments that I had gotten into with somebody online was I was saying, look, a full-scale nuclear exchange would be worse than the asteroid that knocked out the dinosaurs. And the smartass came back at me and said, "Oh yeah, well the KT impact had this was the equivalent of this many nuclear bombs, and we don't even have that many in the world," which is true, but the impact that killed the dinosaurs was all isolated in one location, the Yucatan Peninsula. Also, the vast majority of death was caused by the climate change that rapidly happened around the world. The difference being is that in a nuclear exchange, it spread all over the globe in various locations. It takes out all of your resources, your cities, your power plants, all the things of value, and it's massively radioactive. And a nuclear strike, unlike an asteroid, you have that long-term radiation which will poison the soil, poison your coastlines. You have mass cancer, death from radiation poisoning, cancer, and genetic damage. It's a nightmare. And this constant notion that I keep hearing from people of, oh, well, one bomb wouldn't be that bad. No, but it would still be pretty bad. Even one is going to look, if one goes off over there, we're still going to feel effects here. It may not be nightmarish, but we'll feel it. Two goes off, it's incremental, or it's exponential. It gets worse and worse. I'll do another fun one here. So these are the main concerns. Okay, we'll leave this up. And this is for a 100 kiloton warhead, not a 1. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. 100, a 1. Sorry, no. Anyway. Now let's talk about a history. Well, let's see what your comments on there. Now I'm going to give you a history lesson. Hey, Wolf, sorry, but we didn't do a show last night. I laid down at 3 in the afternoon and did not wake up till 3:30 in the morning. Okay? So I'm very, very sorry. I would have emailed you and had a show otherwise. YouTube seems to be dicking around with a lot of small channels lately. Yeah, and you know what I've noticed? They're channels that would go against the narrative. I've noticed that if there's a channel that might go against the big narrative of Russia bad, I've noticed that a lot of them were actually hit with a strike last week, so that while the big propaganda push happened, that we couldn't talk. And no, I don't think I'm being paranoid here. It's pretty much proven that YouTube is pretty much in for the long haul with the, I guess, global agenda, as they call it. I don't know. It's pretty blatant at this point. All right, I'm just going through your comments here. For all we know, the KT extinction took thousands of years. Yeah. Well, just on the KT experiment, the impact, we don't know, because it doesn't look like even an asteroid of that size could have caused that level of climate change. It's now suspected that the impact may have split into 3 parts and hit different parts of the globe, and that there may have also been volcanic eruptions involved, because the Earth was a lot more volcanic back then. Okay. There's not going to be a nuclear war unless a certain set of circumstances occur. Well, I'm going to get into that in disguise. Right now, no, I don't think we're going to see missiles in our sky anytime soon. My concern is that our president's a fucking moron, and he's, well, more to the point, the guy is going through dementia. He's not home. He wasn't smart to begin with. And the mean girls pulling his strings haven't a fucking clue what they're doing, or, well, really, they don't know fuck all. They're strictly reacting. All right. If we had to ensure Armageddon to save the integrity of Joe Biden's bank account, I say America's. Yeah, exactly. That is where we're at, too. And I mean, Biden himself doesn't seem to have ever really understood the dangers of a nuclear war. You look at his old videos, he was never a smart guy. Okay. And the problem we're dealing with here is Joe was never smart. He's got dementia. And we're dealing with Putin, who is very smart, very devious. The man is ex KGB. He knows what's going on in the background. He knows these games better than our government does. He's an old Cold Warrior himself, and he was a pro at it. So yeah, we're up against. Maybe it would go off with a strike. That's kind of an iffy scenario. And honestly, even the whole Yellowstone thing is way overblown. I hope you know that. It really is. Um, okay. Going through your Dems. Trump can't be trusted with nuke codes. He would push the button just to get just because he felt slighted. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Mark House says, "Nuke cities are just as smart as what kids?" Joe Biden, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, let's get to the next part. Let's do a history lesson on why this whole thing's stupid to begin with, okay? Um, One of the things that's disgusted me is the insane level of anti-Russia sentiment that's coming up right now. I mean, we've got cat shows banning Russian breeds of cat. Private citizens in this country who are Russian, okay, are having their assets seized, their homes, their boats, um, their bank accounts. These are private citizens. I mean, we're treading dangerously near to Japanese internment camp stuff in this, and lo and behold, who's cheering this on but the left? Um, but then again, who set up the Japanese internment camps? A Democrat. And for the record, he was deeply racist against Japanese people. He despised them. It was kind of a weird. He had a hate boner for the Japanese for some reason. Um, FDR. Anyway, here's the history lesson that nobody wants to talk about. All right, the West is absolutely somewhat responsible for what's going on right now. Back in 1991, when the Soviet Union fell, President Bush flew to Moscow and made a promise that NATO would never push to the borders of Russia. And this promise was made, I remember it, and it was done to maintain global stability and and as a show of peace to the new Russian Federation. It was also done in specifically to make sure that we reduced the risk of a third world war because we didn't know what kind of government Russia was going to end up with. They could have been crazier than the next. And so saying, look, we're not going to threaten your borders was a good way of preventing that. News sources right now, I've seen a lot of news sources claiming this is a myth, it's a lie, it never happened. Fuck you. It did. It happened. I was alive when it happened. I read the articles, I watched the press conferences on television, and the news has been going out of their way to memory hold this event. And it disgusts me. I mean, I don't know why they want so badly to have a war with Russia. Anyway, so George Bush Sr. had made this agreement at the time. Then, when George W. Bush Jr. came in 2000, he immediately broke Dad's promise and started pushing for Ukraine to join NATO. These efforts were then strengthened and continued by the Obama administration. Seems like they were in equal agreement on that front. When the Ukrainian president, I can't even pronounce his name, okay? Whoever was the president of Ukraine at the time, I'm not even going to try for the name. He refused at the time during the Obama administration. Europe had approached him wanting him to sign a free trade agreement with the European Union. The Ukrainian president declined in choosing instead to establish closer ties to Russia and their economy. Obama's CIA then supplied rebels in his nation with weapons and aid and sparked a civil war in the region, which we then played off as Russia's fault. This is all true. Now, with the West once again pushing hard for Ukraine to join the EU and NATO, again, Russia sees this as a threat. Last year, Putin even warned the West, do not do this. It will start a third world war. He specifically said he would not allow NATO, he would not accept NATO putting bases and nukes on his border, adding that this would be the equivalent to Russia putting missiles on the border of on the US Canadian border or the US Mexican border, and that we would never accept it. Essentially, the situation is no different than what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis when Russia set nukes up in Cuba right off the coast of Florida, which almost did cause World War III to happen. And yet, the Biden administration, the Obama administration, the W administration, and the EU have all merrily been pushing for this so hard. And a lot of their puppeting, lots of bribing, a lot of the corruption going on has to do with I don't know why they want to antagonize Russia so badly, but they do. So that's the other aspect that a lot of people just fail to understand or refuse to understand. So the next part, because, we're not done yet. And by the way, for those of you who are wondering, why is the EU pushing so hard? Because if you've watched any of the EU meetings, the European Union has admittedly said they see themselves as an empire. This is the old European royalty coming back, trying to play the same fucking games that started World War I and II. So why is it not so easy as, okay, well, what if, there was a nuke detonated in Ukraine and the US pushed back? And why is it not that easy? Well, it goes like this. The United States, and most people are not aware of this, has what's called a first strike policy or a first strike strategy. In the event of a nuclear-armed nation making a credible threat against a NATO ally, the United States' strategy would be to strike first with overwhelming force, with the hope of neutralizing enough enemy nukes that we could survive a weakened retaliation by that enemy. This means we would launch a full-scale nuclear strike with the aim of blasting the enemy into the Stone Age. And what we consider right now as a survivable weakened retaliation would mean basically the East and West Coast getting fried and the rest of the nation surviving. Now, I know part of us are all thinking right now, well, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. But then remember all the stuff about fallout and black rain and temperatures dropping and starvation. So yeah, right now, the only one bright spot here is that if a nuke went off in Ukraine right now, they're not a NATO ally, so it would not trigger the first strike policy. But if, say, Europe were to push back and then a nuke goes off in, say, Brussels or some Romania, you name it, just one of the European nations, theoretically, we've just triggered our first strike policy. Bam. Will we do that? Does Joe Biden have the balls? Does he even have the brains to know what that means? Probably not. And it's clear that the people right now talking about nukes and going to war with Russia don't seem to really be all that worried about the idea of what kind of hell it would put the rest of us through. But then again, they've got their underground neighborhood that's basically set up to survive such an instance. Now consider this. Moscow has an automated failsafe set up for such an event as well. If a nuke explodes near or around the Russian capital, an automated system automatically will launch all 760 of their ICBMs at Europe and the United States. And for the record, they have the biggest stockpile of nuclear weapons. Their nukes also blow up bigger than ours. Our strategy is clean nukes, which mean they spew less radiation, and they're smaller explosions. We go in with the strategy of a scalpel. The Russian nukes are more bigger boom, bigger damage. They've always had the sledgehammer strategy. So, yeah, I mean, it would be very easy for this to trip off into a full scale war if this was allowed to escalate, if this moved beyond just Ukraine, or if they made Ukraine a part of NATO and a nuke went off there. It's not a pretty picture. Now, the most realistic situation is I don't think a missile will be launched if Putin decides to use a nuke. Putin's a very, very smart man, and Europe's borders are really porous because they don't really believe in borders, except the one they have with the Russians. They believe in having a strong border on Russia, but in general, they don't have strong borders. In fact, their borders are so weak in Europe that Brussels has become the number one place in Europe to buy weapons from Muslims. Muslims have been smuggling in weapons from Islamic nations and selling them in Brussels to, well, other Islamic extremists and the mob and criminals and whoever's got the money, because it's that easy to sneak shit in. Now, bear in mind, with a border that porous, it would be very easy for a very smart man like Putin to have a white van sitting on a corner in every European capital that just would need a cell phone call. And I'm serious. He may already have nukes in place all over Europe that would just need a dialing of a cell phone to go off. And so there would be nothing in the sky. We would have no way of seeing it coming. We wouldn't even have a way to confirm who it came from. You would just have a city vaporized. Now, there is actually some good things to this, by the way. It means it would be a ground detonation, which is much preferable to an airburst for lots and lots of reasons. The damage to the rest of the world is far less if it's on the ground. So, yeah, I don't think Putin would launch any ICBMs at anybody. I think if he wants to hit Europe, he's probably already got the weapons in place. And he's, frankly, the kind of sneaky bastard that would do it. Now, I hate to say it, but our borders are pretty porous too, unfortunately. The only thing we've got in our favor in that regard is we used to, I don't know if we defunded them, but we used to have specialists who would literally fly over the city with Geiger counters and special instrumentation to make sure there weren't any weird radioactive spikes saying, hey, there's something here. And we used to have them patrolling every airport as well as customs. But then again, we've had Obama and Joe Biden, so that may not exist anymore. Okay, let's see what your comments are. And I guess it's time to answer questions. Um, hey, Star, I hope you got my email. Wait, Russian Americans being punished for something they didn't do? Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Now, I don't know if they've actually gone after Russian Americans yet, but they definitely have people who are Russian citizens being published or punished in this country, which is still screwed up. I mean, That would be the equivalent to punishing Canadians in this country for the actions of their dumbass Justin Trudeau. It doesn't make any sense. We should be better than that. The worse is the bank seizures that are going on. Destabilize trust in the dollar as reserve currency long run, as a reserve currency in your long run. Get ready for devaluation of currency. And Canada did it too with what they did to the truckers. They devalued their currency and have ensured that nobody trusts their banks. What's interesting is in response to all of this, everyone's going to Bitcoin, which is exactly what our governments don't want. And it's also what the World Economic Forum does not want. There's an American rap group with a Russian name that got banned because people thought it was Russian. That's, again, fucking retarded. There are some really great Russian bands that I listen to. And why would you hold a citizen responsible for the actions of its government? I would never want to be held responsible for for all the shit Joe Biden's doing. I mean, yeah, could you imagine being held responsible because Joe Biden's a fucking dumbass and his administration are a bunch of commies? That is ridiculous. And by the way, if any of you are wondering what Russian band I'm talking about, it's folk metal called Grai, Grai. They're great. Check them out. I will say I'm mixed on the whole Russian versus Ukraine business. On one hand, I do sympathize with the Ukrainian civilians, but on the other hand, I don't like Russian people suffering either. They're really pulling at your heartstrings, aren't they? They're doing everything you can to convince you just how horrid the Ukrainian people have it. Here's the thing. They're just as much a victim of their own nation as they are the Russians. Okay? I will hold that in every way. Their government made this happen. They definitely want to be part of the EU's great empire. And by doing so, really it's the elite in that country want in with the World Economic Forum and their new vision for the world. And also, basically, they're being bribed. The EU said, "You're a poor nation. We'll give you a lot of money." That's really what happened. And their government said, "Okay, we like free money." And the next thing you know, who gets hurt? The people. Keep in mind that Ukraine is a puppet government. They're grossly corrupt. They're essentially ran by politicos and the mafia. Their economy is ran by the mafia. It's not a great place. It's not like Hong Kong where we're talking people that really should just be liberated. Frankly, I think risking a few nukes for Hong Kong and Taiwan is a far more justifiable argument, or getting or stopping China from becoming more nuclear than they are, and stopping them from what they're doing globally. That's a far more sensible argument than, frankly, this little border state that wasn't formed until the 1920s, and it was formed by the Soviet Union, and at one time had the Russian capital. And there's a site, half the country, or at least a third of the country closest to the Russians, want to be Russian. Did you know that? So it isn't so simple. This is kind of like if a whole bunch of Mexicans went to California and said, "We want us to go back. We want California to be part of Mexico again." And I can't imagine a government that would support. Oh, except Joe Biden, he'd be okay with that. I heard that in Finland, some person with a Russian background was denied a place in a vocational school because he or she is Russian. Okay, that's a little different. Really, I'd be honest with you. If you're Russian, don't go to Finland. Okay, that may not sound like the greatest thing to say, but if you're Russian, don't go to Finland. There is a blood feud with those people, and frankly, the Finns have every right to be that angry. They have been invaded and terrorized by the Russians for so long, okay, um, that even if you're completely well-meaning, arriving in Finland as a Russian, you might as well be wearing a clan hood in a ghetto, okay? Um, Also, keep in mind, Finland, small population, small nation, they're not multi-ethnic like we are. Really, it is the land of the Finns. It is their homeland, and they have a very strong belief that Finnish resources and Finnish schooling and all that other stuff should be for Finnish people. And frankly, I think they're right. If that's the world, if that's the nation they want, if that's how they want to run their homeland, they have every right to. But I don't really know why a Russian person would want to go to Finland anyway. That's a nation that's hyper paranoid that Russia will invade them again. Every citizen has a gun there and is trained for that reason. And I mean, they've got fallout detectors and all sorts of things just to make sure they're ready if the Russians try to invade them. The hate towards Russians and Russia and Russians is ridiculous concerning what's happening at the moment. I do have sympathy and empathy for the Ukrainians, but I don't like Russian people suffering. Yeah, okay, yeah, somebody else said that too. Well, okay, I'm going to repeat also. We can't really trust anything we're being told. So many things that are being reported in the news aren't true. I mean, there's been like footage from air shows posted and claiming that they were Russia invading Ukraine. There's footage from video games that were claiming it was the ghost of Kiev. There was that massacre that, in fact, never happened, where, in fact, they were just taken prisoner. There's a lot of lies going on, and there's no way to trust anything. And at this point, uh, you've got um, you've got so many individual parties joining in. One hand doesn't know what the other is doing. Tankies are the I haven't really seen any pro commie shit in here. Okay. Nobody is going to be nuked, lol. Let's hope so. Definitely let's hope so, but I don't know. Have you actually listened to Putin's speeches, or are you only trusting what the news is telling you? You listen to this man talk, and he's talked about it for the last couple of years, but even last year when it was very clear that they were going to push up to his borders, this is a man who is convinced his his nation's traditions and his nation's identity is at threat. He's said as much, and I don't think he's bullshitting. Um, I honestly think if they push him to the wall, he will push back harder. I really do. Will he risk global nuclear war? I think he's smart enough not to. Unfortunately, I don't think our president's smart enough not to, really. And I think that the people puppeting Joe Biden don't really understand what the risks are making these kinds of threats. None of them really seem all that well informed on, well, global policy and diplomacy and all the other things that are required. Keep in mind, this administration, one of the top things on the first day of the Biden administration was what would be the color scheme and how would they what would be the color scheme and the new matching colors for Air Force One, and how would it be decorated? I shit you not. Russia phobia has been strong with warmongers and NATO fanatics. Yeah, I've noticed that just will not die. That there's been so many chances to normalize relationships with Russia since the 90s, and the old Cold Warriors will not let it go. Of course, it was profitable. Okay. What was the events that is continuously memory hold that people need to learn? What sources do you recommend? Oh God, I maybe one of these days I can sit down one of these afternoons, but I'm very busy with the book. I really need to get it done. Kat assigned me an extra chapter, which kind of threw things off. But more about that another time. Um, what the memory hold event was that George Bush Sr., after the fall of the Soviet Union, took an immediate trip to the Soviet Union and worked out a way. This was also discussed during the fall of the Berlin Wall as well. What do we do to make sure this does not escalate into a conflict between the East and the West? How do we prevent this from tripping off something neither of us want? And Russia's main demand was, do not extend NATO to our borders. We do not want NATO bases on our borders. That was the event. And the thing is, right now, I've been trying to do searches. The press is just littered with articles trying to explain why that never happened. And it's amazing how many things have all been memory holds, old news broadcasts, articles. I can't find them. But I will tell you, I was in high school at the time. I was alive. I saw this happen. I remember this. So this isn't bullshit. Okay. Gotta love Americans. They have to make every conflict and every foreign problem their business. Well, that wasn't always the case. FDR kind of did that. The EU will do nothing. They buy too much of Russian oil. Well, the stupid thing is they removed Russia from the SWIFT payment, which allows global trade. So if they buy Russian oil, they would have to do it through black market means or a third party. That's retarded. Okay. Never trust your opponent in a knife fight to not bring a gun, not to mention use it. Honorable man wouldn't use a gun. A wise man still has one just in case. Agreed, Retneck. By the way, dude, you want to talk after this? I'll email you and we'll talk about projects. Okay. Russia has made a North Korea of itself, a global pariah. Uh, maybe. I honestly think the pieces haven't all fallen yet. Unfortunately, this sort of game of chicken we're seeing right now is looking a hell of a lot like the opening shots of World War One. Okay, just saying, it really does. We see various empires and fading empires pushing their weight around, and everyone's a little too anxious to have a hot war. And that was the situation that led to World War One. Give Russia back to Poland. you know, I think the Poles would do a great job with Russia, actually. There's a great example. Okay. Let's say Putin rolled into Poland and threatened them. That would be worth us going to war for, without a shadow of a doubt. I would be all for defending Poland. That is a nation that deserves our support in every fucking way. Um, they're certainly not the Ukraine. Uh, Russian restaurants in the US are being attacked and vandalized. You don't want to say people are stupid, but people are fucking stupid. Well, I may have longer documents for you very, very soon, Tuelde. I mean, the finishing touches, like I said, there was just like little bits I needed to do. I'm getting a little paranoid of just how many typos I'm finding on my own after I've had people read it. So I'm a little iffy on that. I'm a little nervous. Um, Going through all the text, Kat told me I needed to do one more chapter, so I did, and it turned out being, oh, it's almost 10,000 words. It's a history of the Amazons. The left are attacking anything they can perceive in Russian, including alcohol made in the US. Again, these people are fucking stupid. I mean, seriously. I mean, okay, here's one of the dumbest reasons to be doing that. In my experience throughout my life, every Russian American I have ever met has been the most patriotic person. One of them, they've been incredibly anti-Russia, very pro-American. They came to this country for freedom. They believed in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They believe in freedom, and they were very, very anti-communism. So, opposing Russian Americans and Russian American businesses is fucking retarded. The fact is, if the Russians were to try and invade this country, the Russian Americans would be the first to pick up their guns. Trust me on that. Here's the Russian band I was mentioning, Gry. They're excellent. It's not the Russians doing this, it's the communists doing it. The problem is they won't submit the facts, same as the socialists and Nazis. Which ones? Sadly, which communists? I mean, do you mean the European communists that are currently running the EU, or do you mean the communists within the Ukraine who want to go towards a white nationalist communism? Are you talking about the communists who want the old Soviet Union back? Are you talking about the communists in the United States who want wokeness? I mean, we got a lot of communists around this day, and I think I think there's a serious need for some fucking helicopter rides, honestly. That's it. I want you all to buy helicopters and offer free rides to communists, okay? Some people are celebrating RT America's suppression and censorship or US carriers. Yeah, that is just like the fucktard liberals that were all cheering when Alex Jones got taken off the air. It's like, you don't have to agree with them. Yeah, I know. I can't pronounce that word. Some brand of Russian vodka is being embargoed as a virtue signal. It's made and bottled in Estonia. So it's just hurting the Estonians. So how about Popov? Is that still available? Because I know there are a lot of young college students who survive on Popov. That and homeless people. Every one of Zelensky's decisions has leaned towards maximizing civilian casualties. Sure does seem that way, doesn't it? Propaganda on both sides. I'm very suspicious of the American leftists' motivation, and you should be. Um, yeah, as you should be. Well, the other thing I'd remind you is that Zelensky is pretty much a tool of the Democrats. Okay, it's kind of embarrassing just how much the Democratic Party and Zelensky are in bed with each other. Oh no, Putin is not a part of the World Economic Forum. He has been booted out. There's a video. I wish I could play it for you. I downloaded it where Putin basically told the World Economic Forum that he wanted Russia to retain its culture, that he did not want internet companies censoring what his people could read, hear, and see, and that he wanted the right for Russia to have Russian banks, and that he felt that national identity was very important, as was Russian tradition and religion, and that he was sick of them continually threatening it. And after that speech, they kicked him out of the WEF. So yeah, Actually, tell you the truth, also, Soros is suddenly at a falling out with the Chinese, so it's kind of nice to see all of them eating each other. Yeah, huh, go ahead. Nobody cares. All right. I hate how much propaganda and false information is coming out of this war. Both sides are doing it. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Both sides are dumping out tons of it. And that's one of the reasons we can't get a clear picture of anything. How much is Bitcoin and how does one invest? All I get are people telling me I have to pay thousands of dollars in GPUs. Well, it's not the best option, but right now I'm doing it through PayPal. Um, so we'll see. I am looking to seeing how I could move on to further that because yeah, I would rather not have to go through Bitcoin. So I'm trying to see how I can go around that. But for the time being, I'm going through Bitcoin. And right now, it's cheap for some reason, but at the same time, everyone's kind of investing in it. So I don't know, strike while the iron's hot before we get hit with hyperinflation. If not risk World War III for Taiwan, certainly risk World War III for the Taiwan Straits. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Find it interesting that that nobody cares guy was thoroughly offended that we didn't want to go to war with Russia over a corrupt nation like Ukraine. Biden is going to deport my Russian cats. And wives bought wives. Yeah, I mean, look, we do need to be able to buy our Russian wives, right? Because let's face it, nobody wants any of these woke ladies, do we? Here in the U.S. Yeah, I know how much the Poles hate the Russians, and you know what? I'm with them on that. Um, you thought what the Nazis did to the Poles was bad. The Russians, it was worse, or the Soviets, but still, yeah. Um, and it's just like, what was it, Latvia? Latvia. If Russians had to flee Latvia for how badly they had treated the Latvian people, and I mean, the moment the Soviet Union fell, Latvians were killing Russians, and frankly, I can't really blame them considering the hell they were put through. Um, yeah, we don't hear very much about the portions that we want to go back to Ukraine at all, and I'm really curious about what their take is. Um, Here's another thing about Ukraine. Joe Biden's talking a hard game. Okay. He's going on and on about, he's going to do all this and that. He's only sent 2,000 troops. Okay. Only 2,000 troops. That's nothing. Okay. That is absolutely nothing in the face of what Russia has there right now. Second, they're not doing anything. I'm surprised no one noticed this in the State of the Union address. Biden flat out said our troops wouldn't be fighting, they would simply be defending our NATO allies, which means technically, I guess they're not even in Ukraine. And that also means he's not going to do anything because, well, Ukraine's not a NATO ally. Maybe people don't know this. Maybe people assume that means we're right now fighting the good fight in Ukraine. We're not. And yeah, I think basically what's going to happen is that this may probably fight to a standstill and that Putin will probably keep half of Ukraine. Most likely the half of Ukraine that wanted to join the the Russians anyway. Because there is the part that's closer to Russia, a large portion of that part of Ukraine wants to rejoin Russia. So it's not exactly clear cut. Mhm. You can buy it. Many companies sell gold coins or small bars. There are also vaults that specialize in storing it. Hey, can you set up a link for some of those companies? I'm curious because yeah, I'm pretty worried about the hyperinflation that may hit. The problem with gold is that it has so many practical uses, and a lot of these gold dealers are rich people buying the gold stock while it's low and trying to sell it for a high price. Yeah, but my thought is let's say you spend $100 on gold right now. If our currency hyperinflates to the point that like a dollar is worth a nickel, the gold will still retain its value. Pour out one for Sam Sam Hyde, Samuel Hyde, Ghost of Kiev. Ghost of Kiev, Snake Island Massacre, etc. Everyone's lying. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, if it was such a noble fight, they wouldn't have to lie now, would they? And for that matter, the atrocities that we're being told are happening in the Ukraine, which I'm sure some are, some clearly aren't. Frankly, those atrocities are happening, worse things are happening on a daily basis in places like Congo. We don't care. We never did. Why? They lied about a Holocaust memorial getting blown up? God. Mm. Commies are repulsed by cat's big boobs. They believe she should share. um, are you familiar with Estes Perkel? Just out of curiosity, I'm just asking because otherwise, this is yeah. I'm just. If you're, are you aware of who Estes Perkel is? Because he kind of did that scene in a movie where the Russians take over a small Midwestern town, and it's time to for comrades to share their wives because they're communists. Okay. Believe it or not, Spielberg originally wanted to get Don to be the head of the animation studio, but already with Fox, Steven settled for Disney usurper Jeffrey Katzenberg. Um, when the Germans rolled through the Ukraine in 41-42, the Russians armed the partisans to fight with them. When the Russians rolled back over them, the Ukrainians turned on the Russians. Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's face it. The Russians have definitely earned themselves a lot of ill will in the region, and rightly so. I mean, the atrocities under the Soviet Union were nightmarish, or they were a nightmare. From what I heard a long time ago, that Putin in Russia is considered a moderate, and that his peoples are more considered to the extreme. Yeah. Actually, from what I understand, Putin does not want to go back to communism. He wants to go back to some sort of Russian nationalism. But if your country is your homeland, if you're not like the United States, where it was founded by immigrants or founded by settlers and conquered, yeah, I mean, it is their homeland. I mean, frankly, it's my opinion that if a people still own their homeland, they kind of have a right to do with it what they want, right? That's why I think it's ridiculous that the Irish are repeatedly being told that they have to diversify. It's like, why? It's the Irish homeland. It's always been their land. They didn't steal it or any bullshit like that. They didn't conquer it. That's the Irish homeland. Why the fuck should they be importing diversity? You know, they're yeah, whatever. You're not wrong about the history between Finland and Russia, but the student being denied a place in school is done to respond. Oh, really? Oh, okay. On the other hand, as someone with a Polish nationality, Russia mustn't be allowed to tell us which allies to join ever again. Yeah, that is a fair counter argument, Mars Anonymous. The only thing is, we kind of promised, we made an agreement with Russia that we wouldn't do that we wouldn't make the offer. In the spirit of stability and ensuring that there was not any escalation of tensions between two nuclear superpowers, we both agreed, okay, we won't push NATO to the borders of Russia. And in all fairness, I'm sure we wouldn't be okay with Russian military bases in Mexico on the Tijuana border or up in Canada with missiles pointed at us. I'm sure we wouldn't be okay with that, just like we weren't okay with Russian missiles in Cuba. I can see both sides on that. Now, I don't know. As far as Poland's concerned, I'm far more sympathetic to the Poles, and this isn't the episode into getting into it why, but no, I have a lot of respect for the Poles. Frankly, I think they're one of the few nations in Europe getting it right. The Ukrainian resistance movement that practically controlled the forest and swamp parts of the Ukraine from 45 to 47, it was most successful anti-communist force in World War II. That's a good sign. Then why do they want to join with the commies now is the question. I mean, the fact is what the EU is pushing for, and this is more about joining the EU than NATO, by the way. The NATO thing is window dressing. This is really about joining the EU and the World Economic Forum. They are really pushing for a new form of communism. So why is the Ukraine so hot to go with that? Oh, okay. Can I go a couple of years in my life without there being a disaster of some kind of place, please? Are you? Where are you, dude? Okay. Sorry for the silence. I'm going through these. Russian immigrants are very patriotic. They're some of the most patriotic in this country, which is also probably why woke people don't like them. I remember in San Francisco, the lefties were always trying to buddy up to Russians until they found out they hated communism, and it was hilarious. Most Slavic immigrants have been virulently anti-communist. Yeah, exactly, and that's why I kind of like Eastern European immigrants. That and they'll be really honest with you. You ever notice that about an Eastern European? They are so no bullshit. Um, can you put this stream on WordCraft put this stream on WordCraft in the odd? I'll have to put it on its own channel. I want to keep WordCraft separated from all of this so that it doesn't get banned, because I'm sure this channel's days are numbered. Seriously. And for that matter, I hate to say it, it's looking like Rumble is turning out to be the place everyone's moving to. So I'm going to have to go back, unfortunately. I'll put a WordCraft channel up there because I honestly don't have a lot of hope for YouTube in the long run. They're just becoming more and more oppressive. Hey, Big Tits, how you doing?
Can you write down your access information so I can get your Amazon's 1099?
No. I'll have to do that later.
Okay, not a problem.
Kat's doing the taxes, so that's why she's not with us. So I don't think she'd enjoy this one anyway. I feel like people want Russia and Putin to still be around to be a boogeyman sense of the country. Yeah, exactly. They need something to replace COVID, and they're trying to replace it with Red Scare and Putin. And because Putin is essentially pushing back against the whole World Economic Forum woke vision, and not play. He's providing an alternative to the banking system that Europe's trying to implement. I think really that's what they're pissed about. That, and I think they seriously want to seize his oil. And I do think if they push too hard, I do think he would be more than willing to drop bombs on them. And that does worry me because, yeah, I think that if Putin really did see his nation being taken from them, if he sees the Russian homeland being taken and swallowed up by this whole, one globalist identity, I do think he would probably start hurling nukes because he's a nationalist at heart. Okay. So what is my favorite Gry album? Give me a second. The thing is a lot of their albums have repeats. Let me go to Bandcamp. That's where I buy all my music, Bandcamp, because the artist gets most of the money. And it isn't Amazon or iTunes, which is shit. I will never buy from iTunes again or Apple again because when I changed players, the files wouldn't play anymore. Thanks, Amazon. Or no, thanks, Apple. Amazon hasn't been as bad. Their files seem to be universal, but they take away from the artists. The artists get more money if you go through Bandcamp. Okay, what titles do I like from Gry? Okay, this is going to be kind of confusing. I'm going to put up the Bandcamp link first off because if you don't have a membership to it yet, you should. Ones that I thought were exceptionally good. Well, the easiest way to go is their best of album. I'll put the title in here, and you'll understand why I'm putting the link in. You know what? I'll do a share screen instead. How about that? Okay, so everyone listening, I think we're pretty much off the topic of nukes now. So if you want to go off and start your daily jerk off session or whatever you're going to do with the rest of your day, you can. I don't think I'm going to do much more educating on how horrible nuclear war is. All right, yeah, this is Gry. Honestly, I think they're a mix of that. I think some of the members are from a death metal band, and then they got some women in who do singing, and it's very traditional. It's, as I said, folk metal. Or yeah, they call it excellent Russian folk pagan metal from Eastern Russia, the Republic of Tartaristan. Where the Tartars come from, I don't know. But this album here is good. This is the one I was recommending because it's a best of album. And its best track is In the Arms of Mara, in my opinion. And then this new album, Ashes, so far it's been pretty good. I like it. So there you go. And these two down, this one here and this one here, the weird thing is they all share, they double up on tracks. So I don't know if they're different recordings or remastered or what, but there's some overlap in these albums. I read about a bunch of Russian models and porn stars condemning Russia in this invasion. Could they be actually commenting on Putin? I would only hope people could separate labels. Who the fuck knows? Soros and the Chinese are still partners. It's just a matter of who is the junior partner. Did you see the video of Soros throwing a shit fit about China, though, and how he didn't trust them anymore and that they were backstabbers? and the world should be okay to start criticizing China again. So yeah, I think he just suddenly realized they weren't his friends. The Grey of Kiev on his flying saucer shooting down Ruski's Star Storyteller. Yeah, that is kind of the problem with cryptocurrencies is they do require electronic. And well, yeah, you need to be able to be plugged in to use it. And let's say in a disaster scenario where the net goes down or you're kicked off the net, or you're not allowed to have a phone anymore, you would need some sort of hard currency. But in lieu of silver and gold, everybody wants alcohol, especially when they're depressed. In bad times, everyone will want alcohol. Okay. Second, in a disaster, cigarettes are better than gold. So, yeah, I don't smoke, but I know for a fact cigarettes would trade really well. Maybe Putin has controlled opposition. I suspect that all of this is no, it isn't. It absolutely isn't. And the reason being is that the last thing they want is what's happening right now. They want a very smooth transition. The World Economic Forum, their primary goal is they believe they can create world peace through economic means. That essentially, if they put an economic collar around everyone's neck, where everyone is essentially dependent on the banks for everything, and that the corporations can take away your money at an instant, no one will fight ever again. They don't understand that people like Putin aren't fighting because of money. There are other things that people care about other than money. But the people in the World Economic Forum and the Biden administration and Europe are so detached from everything but materialist wants and needs. They can't grasp that people would go to war for other things. Which is something I encountered myself when I was trying to pitch Titanium Rain to Hollywood. They couldn't grasp the idea of a dictator going to war for something where there was no financial gain. They didn't understand nationalism, basically. If there wasn't money in it, why do it? And you watch Putin's videos, even from a few years ago at the World Economic Forum meetings, he had given them warnings saying, look, what you guys are doing is beginning to look a whole lot like 1938. He really did say this. I think this was in 2000. He told the World Economic Forum that what they were doing was beginning to look disturbingly like the dawn of World War II, and that if they continued on their path, it was a very good chance they were going to trigger a third world war in Europe. He told them this, and he was never really fully on board. He did attend the meetings though, and it was very interesting because when he said that in 2020, they all just kind of blew him off like, what do you know? Who would do that? All I can say is I hope that if there is an invasion of the US, it's Russia and not the Chinese, especially if the really ripped guys from the army recruitment. Yeah. No, the thing is we wouldn't. Well, okay, the blue states would fold. I'm going to be honest; they'd bend right over. The red states, a lot of us would probably just fight till we're dead. Okay, that's not that I should be seeing this, but I have plans to invest in learning how to make NFTs. Not my yeah, NFTs, a great scam if you can profit from it. And that is exactly what the World Bank doesn't want. They want to be able to make money as needed. And let me put it this way, it's very clear that what the world banks want to do is be able to basically invent money that isn't there. And that is what was one of the primary factors that drove Weimar Germany into the hands of the Nazis, was that the banks there were essentially writing banknotes for money that didn't exist. And anyone asked them, well, wait, do you have this money? Yeah, we're the bank. Of course we have it. And they just make it up. And that was one of the things that led to basically the Nazis coming into power, of the many things that they got wrong. Ishi, I got a question for you. Can you transfer your money from a bank account to a... Oh, yeah, definitely. You can. That's what we did. In fact, when we moved to Arizona and just saw how fucked up everything was getting with our government and the leftists and everything, and just how political everything was becoming, we transferred all of our money to a local credit union. Okay. Ukrainians and MSM will crow endlessly over one downed Su-29, but never mention the losses and the Russians gradually encircling. Yeah. That's the other thing that worries me, is that we've really been given this notion that we're kicking everyone's ass over there, and that, one, we're not doing anything. Seriously. We're not militarily, we're really not involved. We've got 2,000 troops, apparently not even in Ukraine, but nearby. Second, we're getting the notion that there's some sort of massive victory and the Russians are being trumped or just stomped on. Maybe it's true, but it seems a little too good to be true, especially with all the other lies. I think it's far more likely a mixed bag, and that I just, yeah, I don't think it's going nearly as well as they're claiming. I'm amused by reports of fuel and ammo shortages of Russian troops. Well, they probably are experiencing that. All right. Yeah, I thoroughly agree that Russia was stolen by the Bolsheviks. No, you study Russia's history, and it's just one long tragedy after the next. You kind of understand why they're a dour people. But there's also a weird expectation there that everything's just gonna, that life's going to suck and everything sucks. It's gonna be that way. And there are things woven into the culture and the language that kind of leads to this fatalism. Oh, what the fuck? Since we're here, I'm gonna sell some t-shirts. Buy some. We love America. It has franks, hamburgers, and hot women. We are not leaving. And you know what? Not only should we not leave, we should make sure that it stays America and does not become socialist, or more like it was over there. So, yeah, reject all this centralized banking shit, all this centralized economy. No. There's a reason we have a First and Second Amendment. And when they say that, when they try to take them away, that's a big hint that it's time to use them. You can download the stuff in whatever format you want. From Bandcamp, yes. All right. Speaking of the communism they're trying to implement in Europe, one of the things they're trying to do right now in Britain, for instance, they want to put this all over Europe, is money that you have limits on what you can spend it on. So, like, if you buy If the government's decided you've purchased too many video games that month, your money will no longer be able to purchase any more video games. If they think you're eating too much meat, they'll put a limit that your money won't be able to buy any more meat. They're actually trying to implement this right now in Britain, and they want to do this in all of Europe. And our buddies in the Biden administration think that's a swell idea. So yeah, you got to wonder who really are the who are the communists here. Although I think really what that'll lead to is one gigantic black market. The guy who made a fortune turning in his fellow Jews to the SS, calling everyone else untrustworthy. Yeah, I know. Soros is such a shitbag. I find it also interesting that it's very hard to get anything on the background of Klaus Schwab beyond a certain age, other than he grew up in Nazi Germany. And that there's not a lot said about his background in that regard. Okay. Watch out for CBDC, central bank digital currency. They'll use this to complete control how you use your money. Exactly, which is why I will not use central bank digital currency ever. Seriously, if they do that, I will just simply move to trade in other forms. Seriously, be it Bitcoin and Ethereum, or trading people bottles of whiskey or precious metals. The reason why I suspect this is a theater is because it all plays into the hands of the WEF, the Great Reset. Yadon Plan, Timetable to Tyranny, Phase 5, Establish Chaos and Martial Law. Well, if that's their plan, it's not going to go too great, especially in this nation, because, we're not Canadians. But no, you look at their plan, they didn't want mass bloodshed. They didn't want wars. They specifically, and still, I don't think Putin's playing along. I really don't. And I think deep down, they haven't quite fully figured out that the Chinese are playing them too. Okay. But yeah, if anyone tries to impose central bank digital currency, no. Absolutely no. Do not do it. And I think they jumped on this because COVID stopped working. They needed someone new to hate. All right. Well, I've been on for almost an hour and a half, so I'm going to call it an afternoon. I'm going to email you, Retnick, and we may talk to you guys later tonight.